Hello and welcome. I'm Margie Kay, and we have a program for you tonight. It's called Two Women and a Map. Gene Walker and I have done a lot of investigations together, and some very strange things have occurred to us along the way. So we're going to share that with you this evening, and I'm going to share my screen, and Gene and I are going to take turns talking about it. So let me do that here real quick. Well, we call this Two Women and a Map for a reason, and that's because we've done a lot of traveling, mostly around the state of Missouri, but we do have some plans to go other areas. Jean is a retired science teacher. She's got a master's degree in education. She is the section director for Kansas City MUFON, a STAR Team investigator, and an author. The book is Family Secrets, and it's about her life and her experiences and her family's experiences with the paranormal. And her website is jeanmwalker.com. I am a licensed private investigator in Missouri. I serve as Assistant State Director for Missouri MUFON. I'm also a STAR Team investigator, an author, and a publisher. And that is my website there, margiek.com. So soon after beginning to work together, we noticed some strange things that would happen. And even when we were apart, the same thing would often happen to both of us. We'll go into a little bit more detail here and tell you what those things are. I'm going to, it's not going to let me do it. I'm trying to go into full screen here.
Slideshow.
Here we go, slideshow. Okay, let me go ahead and paste through these. Oh, I don't know why that noise is on there. Okay, so many strange and unusual things have happened during these investigations. And we've worked together on paranormal and UFO investigations since 2015. Can you believe it's been that long, Gene?
Well, actually, I think it was longer, Margie, because I think I became an investigator in 2012.
Okay.
So,
well, I think 2015 was our first big one.
Oh, and that might be.
So you want to go ahead? You want to talk about this one, Gene?
Okay. Let's see. About the second case I ever had with MUFON, this gentleman that I was working him and his wife's case had told me that his ex-wife that very week had accused him of murdering a young girl that was killed over in, I think it was Overland Park, Kansas. Yeah, it was. Okay. And then I told Margie about this because I thought it was so unusual that he'd been questioned by the police. And even when he was out in California, they had contacted him, and the police out there had also investigated him. So I just lost. Okay. Margie, you want to talk about your daughter?
Yeah. That same week, my own daughter turned her ex-husband in for murdering the same woman. You can't make this stuff up. And of course, neither man had done it. They had just both drove blue trucks, and that's what their wives thought. But I just thought that was really strange. The Gene and I had just been started working together, and this coincidence happened. So that's just one weird thing. But now the rest is paranormal. I call this Paul the alien because the alien I saw looked a lot like this creature, and he acted like that too. So we were both working on a case in Sugar Creek, Missouri, and Eastern Independence. This person had multiple events occur over the years, everything from UFOs to balls of light, to ETs on her property, possible Sasquatch, which I'll let Jean talk about, and other strange things. So after she made her report, I assigned Jean Walker as the lead on the case, and I assisted her with it. And then we also had other investigators involved because it was so crazy. But this evening, we had several investigators there. We'd been on site for about 3 hours. And the witness said there was a UFO in a certain spot in the western sky. And this is early in the evening. And I looked at my app and I said, no, that's Venus. Well, it wasn't, because as the evening went on, about an hour later, we noticed that Venus got bigger and it moved further down to the right, which would have been normal, but it was bigger. And we kept looking and looking. It eventually turned red and got larger and larger until it was about the size of the sun. And then started moving slowly, but visibly moving, and went down below the horizon. That was odd. So that was a pseudo star or a pseudo planet, what we call when something hides in front of it. And so that was just the first weird thing that happened that evening. I was sitting in a chair watching this object that was on the opposite side of the sky. We were all watching this white object. It was just moving very slowly around, and it wasn't acting like a plane or a helicopter. It was just all pure white. There were no other blinking lights on it or anything. And another investigator was to my right, but also a little bit behind me. So things would get really weird. I saw out of my peripheral vision what I thought was this investigator's bald head leaning over because he may have dropped something. And I looked, and it was not the investigator. It was actually an ET. It was maybe about 3 feet tall, maybe 18 inches away from me. And he was looking at the sky at the same thing we were all looking at, as if he was trying to figure out what that thing was too. It was really funny. I jumped out of my chair, and that's why Jean put this funny picture in there. And
Margie, I've known you for a long time. I've never seen you move that fast before or since.
Yeah. That was, it was such a shock to see that. That's how I reacted. And then I calmed down and sat down again. We're watching again. Now, keep in mind, this was late at night. We'd been out there for hours and we were tired. So at that point, it kind of puts you in a little bit of an altered state. And you're also using your night vision with your eyes. And that's where, you'll see things like this that are interdimensional beings. So it occurred again, exactly the same way. And then a third time it happened. No, at that point, let me say this. The witness had her camera with her, and she scrolled through some pictures on her camera, showed it to us. She said, did it look like this? Well, she had taken a picture of an ET in her backyard next to a tree, and it was exactly like this one. I don't know if it was the same exact one. I kind of think it was, but it was at least the same type. And she also had pictures of ETs looking out of her window from outside, from her bedroom window inside. So that was a little bit unnerving. And then the third time it happened, I see this thing, and he turns and looks at me and gives me this little smirky smile. And that's why I call him Paul, because it was just like it was kind of a joke to him. Like, see, I'm here, and I'm looking at the UFO in the sky, wondering what that is too. It was just bizarre. Okay, so I'm going to let Jean take over here and talk about the sounds you heard.
Okay. I spent a lot of time on this case. This lady and I even became good friends. but I was over there a lot, and there was just so much happening. And so one night I was over there, and we went out on the patio after we had done some other investigation there in the field, and her husband came out and joined her and I, and we were sitting there at a picnic table, and all of a sudden we heard this really weird, loud scream. It was kind of deep and guttural. It was sound like something almost in distress. It had a very scary sound to it. I've never heard anything like this before. And every time this thing would scream like that, then all the dogs and the coyotes, because this was kind of country area out there, they would all start to howl. And so I listened to this sound, and I couldn't figure out what it was, and it had happened about 3 times. I finally turned to her husband. I said, "What is that that screams like that?" Because it was just very unnerving to hear this. And he looked at me and goes, "Man, I don't have any idea." They said they had not heard this type of scream out there before. I immediately thought of a Sasquatch because I was raised in the country. I've spent a lot of time in the woods. I have never heard a sound like that before. So that was kind of my impression at that time, that that's what we were hearing. And so I left pretty quickly after that, after the 3 screams that, well, it happened 3 times, probably 5-10 minutes apart.
Well, and then you listened to some sounds on the internet and you thought that it was the same as Sasquatch, right?
Well, yeah, I spent a lot of time on the internet, and I couldn't find the exact scream. And after going through many different websites where they had these different screams on there from what they thought was Sasquatch, I finally heard one that did match.
Okay. Well, this is not changing. There we go. So about 2 months later, my son-in-law saw a Sasquatch about 1 mile from the site where Jean had heard the screams. The story is that he told me he and his 2 cousins went fishing in a stream in the Sugar Creek Conservation Area, which is real close to this site we're talking about. And it was dusk, and they were just very quiet and just fishing. They weren't talking. And all of a sudden, this large black Sasquatch came out of the woods, went over to the stream, maybe 50 yards from them, and was staring and looking in the water, going back and forth, maybe looking for fish. And then it gave up and turned to the right away from them and went back into the woods. It didn't seem to ever notice them, but they immediately grabbed their stuff and left, and they never went back.
I don't blame you, but that was a real confirmation for me that that was a Bigfoot that I'd heard out there. And
Yeah.
there was so much out there to support a Bigfoot. There was lots of deer and animals and rabbits, and it's also very close to the Missouri River. Lots of woods.
Both places are close to the Missouri River. And the only reason we mentioned the Sasquatch is because it's often connected to UFO sightings. And in this case, especially with Valerie's location, multiple UFO sightings and ETs, and then you add Sasquatch in the mix. Yeah, here's what I just said. Okay, now the disappearing ET. Jean, I think you would agree with me. This is the strangest thing that's happened to us.
Yeah, it was pretty weird. It's scary.
It's up there. Yeah. Okay. So I spoke at a conference in Springfield in 2015 And then I also planned at the same time to visit a witness I'd been working with for a while in order to get a video that he had taken. He said that he had video of an ET, and he had an older camera. And what was weird about this is Springfield's not that far from Kansas City, maybe a 3.5 hour drive. I had actually planned to go home that evening, all the way home after we had spoke to this guy, but we both got very tired. And so we had to stop. We had to find a hotel and stop. That part of it is kind of strange. So we interviewed the witness and we looked at the video he had taken 3 years earlier. Now, this was an older Sony camera with a tape, and it was a larger tape. I brought all kinds of equipment down so that I could take his tape and copy it, but I didn't have anything that would do that. In the video, he opens his camera up and shows us. We see him looking out his kitchen door and panning across the yard, and then there's a tree, and he focuses on the tree. Here is an ET. He has one hand around the tree that you can see, and then several times he peeks around. So he peeks around the corner and goes back, and he peeks around several times. We both saw that very clearly. We know what we saw. So I asked him if I could take the video home with me, take the tape home, make a copy of it, and I would send him back the original. So he agreed to that. Well, we went to the hotel. We fell asleep pretty quickly because we were dead tired. And I brought all of my stuff inside because I didn't trust leaving it in the car. And it was at the foot of my bed to the right next to the wall where I had this tape in my stuff. So Jean, why don't you talk about this part where you woke up?
Okay, in the middle of the night, something woke me up. And so I felt like I couldn't really move though. I was paralyzed, but I could move my eyes. And I seen a figure go into where the bedroom was. There was also a sink area there too. And then you went into the bathroom. So I couldn't actually make out in the dark. I could just see this gray figure moving, and I was the closest, my bed was the closest to the bathroom. So I seen it go by the foot of my bed. And like I said, it couldn't really move. After I seen it go by, then I just immediately went back to sleep, which was weird. So the next morning, I just felt something was kind of weird about this. And so I asked Margie, I said, Margie, how did you sleep last night? And she said, oh, I was really tired. I slept just straight through the whole night. And I said, so you didn't get up and go to the bathroom? You didn't walk past the end of my bed at any time? You looked at me and said, no, I never woke up. So I thought that was strange. And then Margie began to think about what she had seen. So you want to tell about that, Margie?
Well, I actually remote viewed it later.
Oh, was it? Okay.
Yeah, because I didn't remember anything, in regular memory. That I did remote view it. I saw someone come in through the door, go through my things, and then come back later and put it back, which was the tape, put it back in my stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Because when I got back with the video, and I immediately put it into this device that copies the video and turns it into DVD, into digital. So I did that. And then after I'm reviewing the video, there is no ET in the video. There is, the kitchen, the backyard. He's panning around. He's looking at the tree, but that ET is no longer there looking around the tree. So somebody knew about this case, probably, wiretapping, listening to my conversations, knew we were going to be there, followed us to the motel, Maybe they did something to make us tired, so we would have to stay in a motel. I'm not sure. But then they have the technology to take a video and take a part out of it and take the ET out. That's just amazing to me that that could happen. So we had no proof of an ET anymore.
What do you think? Maybe it could have been an alien?
It could have been an ET, but I kind of felt like there was a uniform on the person.
Oh, okay.
And I'm thinking military was involved as well as
Mhm.
ETs. But then the day after we got back, we each noticed that we had a rash. She had a rash on her chest, and I had a rash on my right arm, right around my elbow area. Jean also had a bloody nose the night we returned from Springfield. And now this rash, for this length of time, didn't really do anything. It would just come and go. And if I took a hot shower, it would show up and then it would go away. But in the past year, it has now spread down my right arm, and now it has appeared on my left arm and gone all the way down to my hands. Sometimes it's extremely itchy, and if I take a hot shower, it just flares up. It's horrible, just this deep, dark, terrible red. I call it my alien rash because that's when it started. I have no idea. Maybe we were exposed to something when whatever this is came into our motel that caused this. But Jean, yours hasn't gone away either, has it?
Well, it goes away completely, and then it'll come back, kind of like yours. Only mine doesn't last a long time like yours, and mine doesn't itch. But I probably for about 3 years after that would have reoccurrence of this rash coming back. I haven't had it for well over a year or two now. But you still
Okay.
have it.
Yeah, there's yours.
Yes, it was all of my upper chest area.
Yeah. Okay. Now we get to the Joplin Spook Light. It's also called the Hornet Spook Light. And that location is right down there to the left between Missouri and Oklahoma, right at 37 degrees latitude, which is where a lot of strange things happen. I saw the spook lights when I was 14. My father said, "Would you guys like to go out and see the spook light?" And we're like, "Yeah, we had all heard about it. We lived down there in Neosho." And so we went out, the whole family in our station wagon, went out one evening. The windows were down. And at that time, it was a very, very dark road with trees overgrown and over the top of it. We weren't really expecting to see anything. We just heard these rumors. So my dad's driving very slowly down the road. And all of a sudden, these two lights, balls of light, come to the right of the vehicle, just a few feet away. One was about the size of a basketball, and one was about the size of a softball was behind it. And they were kind of a yellow gold color. They floated, and my dad slows down the car. The small one, he ended up stopping the car because the big one went in front of the vehicle. So he stopped the car. The little one came in the window, and I was sitting on the very right side in the back seat with my brother and sister to my left, came in the window and went very slowly through the back area and then out the other window. And it lit us up as it went by. It was just this really soft glow. When it got to the other side, it joined up with the big light, and they danced around a bit and went off in the woods. We were just flabbergasted that, first of all, there were two of them, not just one, and that they could actually come inside a vehicle. So I've been back several times. I had not seen it again until this time when we went with John. Jean, you want to tell what you saw when you were younger? What were you, about 22?
Yeah, in my early 20s. My first husband and I had this girlfriend named Barbara that lived in Seneca, Missouri, which is right about where the spook light is at. And she had grown up there her whole life. So we went down to visit them, spent the weekend, and she asked me, do you want to go see the spook light? I thought it sounded really interesting. I had never really heard a whole lot about it though. So I said, sure. So her sister and her husband and Barbara and her husband, we all went out, 3 couples, and the girls were all in the front seat of this old Chevy that she had. So it was a bench seat. So as 3 girls were in the front seat and 3 men in the back seat, I was sitting in the middle, and we drove up to down some road. I wasn't familiar with these roads. It was a back road of some sort, and she knew right where to go, having lived there her whole life. And there was this old building that we pulled up to, and was dilapidated, and sign was falling off of it that said Spook Light in great big letters. And I guess they said it had been a museum at one time, where they would sell souvenirs of the spook light and stuff, but it had been deserted for a long time. And as this road ended, it was overlooking a cliff, and we could look down on this field. So Barbara pulls up, turns the car off. We're all sitting there, and she explained to us, you have to be very quiet. You can't make any noise or the spook light will take off. So when we see it, you don't talk or whisper or anything. So as we sat there, down in the field, here come a light, a white light bouncing up and down and moving horizontally around this field that was below us. Then all of a sudden, this thing acted as though it had some form of intelligence, because the light started coming towards the car up that we were on, like I said, a cliff, and it started coming up towards where we were at, almost like it had to have known we were there, sensed it in some way. It was a ball of light about the size of a basketball, and it was a soft white light, but it was dark then. So as it came up, it came over to the hood of the car, at the end of the car, and then it started coming towards us. I thought it was going to come right through the windshield on us, and I didn't know what that thing was. So I started screaming. When I screamed, sure enough, just like Barbara said, that thing just took off and disappeared. So that was my spook light story, but it was scary.
Okay, then we're going to see it again.
Hmm.
Except my slide will not change.
Oh.
Okay. I was speaking at the MUFON meeting in Joplin, where John Cruzon was the section director in Joplin. He was also an ex-police officer and a pilot. And he was also the primary witness, along with 2 other witnesses, of a huge UFO encounter in Joplin. And he has since passed away, unfortunately. But after the meeting, we explained to John that we wanted to see the spook light, and he said he would take us out. He knew the best spot. And so he and his son took us out. So what is the spook light? It's about the size of a beach ball normally. It's been seen moving around a certain area for over 200 years. Some people have even seen it pass through their houses. Sometimes there are more than one. When you approach it, it disappears from view. But if you back up, you can see it again. So you can't get within a certain distance of it. And there have actually been some teams of investigators. I know several of them who have done this.
Mm-hmm.
I have one group of people in Oklahoma and one group in Missouri, and they'll just slowly move to the center, and the spook light will be in between them. Well, one group will see it and then move closer to it, and then they can't see it anymore, but the other group can see it from the other side. So it has we don't know why that would possibly happen. It's been studied by a lot of people, including the government, and nobody has figured out what this is. It is definitely not car lights.
No.
This has been seen for over 200 years, like I said. But the interesting thing about it is this is along the Trail of Tears. So there could be a Native American connection. We got out of our cars, we walked around for a while, and then the spook light showed up. It disappeared and returned several times. At one point, we saw two balls of light with one on top of the other. It was far away and it was difficult to get good photos of it, but we did get photos. And through the binoculars, we could see the light very well. So I'm not sure what the distance is. I would say maybe a mile or less would be the distance. I also asked John Cruzan how many times he had been out there to investigate. And he said over 200. And I said, have you also seen UFOs when you're out here? He says, every time. He said, every time they come out, they also see UFOs. There could be a connection. We spent a lot of time and we listened and looked for other things to appear, and they did as well. Jean, you want to talk about this?
Well, we were all standing out there in the middle of the road, watching the spook light, which would appear and then it would disappear. And then pretty soon we'd see it again. And I was just taking random pictures to my right and into the woods. And actually, I took them on both sides, but I remember I took this particular picture to the right of us, and I didn't see this light. But you can see in the photograph when I got home and downloaded my photos, I seen this. It was really bright, and yet I didn't see it with the naked eye. So the camera definitely picked this up, and it was in the wooded area next to where we were standing.
And then John pointed out a flashing light in the sky. So we all started looking up there, and then another light appeared and another one. It was in a triangular shape. And then this object just started moving very slowly across the sky to our right. And so it made it appear like it was actually a craft. So it had been sitting there, and then the lights came on and it moved. And it was almost like it felt like it wanted us to see it. Like it knew that we were there and wanted us to see it. He had also spoken to multiple witnesses who saw UFOs when they were looking for the spook light. And also told me that a lot of the houses in the area, he knew some of those people, and they said that they would see a yellow or a blue light come through their walls in their house, go around the house, and then go out another wall. So the spook lights have the ability to go through solid objects. Then we saw some soft lights that were glowing in the trees and also on the ground. But I found out later that there are some plants that fluoresce. So they've got some properties, and that could be it. That might not be anything supernatural. We also heard calls that sounded like what Native Americans would make, whoops and things like that. And that's actually what John thought it was. He said that other people also reported hearing these native sounds. They thought they were Native American sounds related to the Trail of Tears. But when I heard them, I've heard a number of calls, of Sasquatch calls, especially like with Scott Nelson. He's played a lot of things for us at meetings and listened to things on the internet. It really sounded like Sasquatch to me. And I also kind of felt the presence of Sasquatch. And we heard an owl hooting very loudly. And we all know that owls are often associated with aliens and Sasquatch. And John told us that Bigfoot can imitate owls as well. And we've also heard that from other people who are experts. At one point, John said that psychics have had some luck communicating with the spook light and getting it to come closer. So the light appeared at one point, and I went to sit in my vehicle to telepathically send a message and ask the light to come closer, and it did so. So Jean and John are standing out in the street, and they said, it's coming closer, it's coming closer. So I got out of the car, and that's when we were able to get some photos and video. This is the first picture that I took, and this is at 10:30, 11 o'clock at night. It is pitch dark. That is not the sun coming up in the western sky or setting. And above it is a star that you can see, okay? And then I lightened that up with my Photoshop program. That's the road. And so you can see the light a little bit better. And then this is closer up. So there was actually, at this point, 2 lights, one above the other. You can kind of see that through the trees. It did come out of the trees and came forward into the road. I don't have a picture of that for some reason, but as we get some more photos, we'll post them. And here's, I think that Jean took this one as well. This was another light object in the trees, only it was a green color.
Mm-hmm.
And this is an old photo from the internet of the spook light. Actually, 2 spook lights with these people watching it. Probably from the 50s or 40s.
Mm-hmm.
And here's another one. I don't know the source of this one either, but it was right above the road. You can see it reflecting on the road. And it still remains unsolved today. Next, we're going to talk about the disappearing plane over the Joplin Memorial Hall. At this same meeting, there were some people there who mentioned that they were driving by the Joplin Memorial Hall one day or one evening, and they were watching this small plane. They just thought it was a regular small plane flying along, and it flew over an area right next to this building and then simply disappeared as if it was going into a portal. So Jean and I thought we better go check this place out. It's a really old building. And you can see the top part shaped like this. Okay, it's shaped like a pyramid on the top. Then you see these columns. And then we see some Masonic symbols. And if there's anything that's Masonic, there are always 2 things on site I've found. You will have a tall object, and then you will have a round or oval object, symbolizing male and female. And then there were lots and lots of Masonic symbols around it. It was built in 1923. And then right on the lot is this. This is where the plane was flying over when it disappeared. So we wondered if there was some type of a portal created by this object that caused that plane to disappear or go into another dimension. Okay, the Witch's Bridge and signs of Bigfoot. We are going to talk about this because it could be related to UFOs too. But there's a lot of strange things that happen there. The Witch's Bridge is near Nevada, Missouri, a little bit west of there in a very obscure place. But this is a long-standing myth, if you will, that's been talked about a lot. Jean, you want to take over?
Okay, the Witch's Bridge, there in Nevada, Missouri, we didn't know where it was. We just knew it was around there. So we stopped at a gas station, and I went in and talked to the people, and I think Margie was with me, and they gave us directions. And they told us it used to be this old covered bridge, which had since fallen down, and they had just built a brand new big concrete bridge over it. But they did know about the myth of hearing witches there. And I had seen this on Channel 4 News right before we left on this trip, and they were talking about it. Sounded interesting to me. So I told Margie about it. I said, we really need to check this out and just see what's going on there. So we drove down there, and when we got to the bridge, the story was that if you would cuss at the witches over the bridge when you were down there over the water, they would yell back at you. So this, they said, though, was normally done at night, and it was late in the afternoon. We were on our way home, but we wanted to try it anyway. So it was really pretty down there. A lot of wooded, heavily wooded area with a few houses, and so we got up on the bridge and we stopped, and we're overlooking the water, and so I get out and I start cussing these witches like crazy, real loud. And Margie grabs me and she goes, no, 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 you've got to stop cussing those witches, Jean. So I did, but we did hear some yells coming back at us. And there's the new bridge, and Margie's standing there overlooking the water. And we were trying to figure out what that yelling that came back at us, because it didn't really sound like a witch. Truthfully, it sounded more like a Sasquatch. So we were pretty interested at this point. We get back in the car. See, it was a very pretty area down there, really, very heavily wooded. And we passed a few houses. We passed one house that we really thought was probably the witch's house. And we didn't know for sure what that strange sound was that we heard coming back. But as we drove across the bridge there, we come across a canopy of trees. It was really pretty how these trees were draped over the road, and it made almost like a tunnel. And it went for about a half a mile down the road. And we stopped the car and got out because we started seeing these branches that were twisted and turned, and one bunch looked like it had been a hut that had been made, like for protection of the weather or something. It was all covered over. And so we took some pictures then of that. And we had just had someone come to our meeting to talk to us about Sasquatch and Bigfoot, of course. And they said that this was something commonly done by the Bigfoots. Sometimes they are using bent trees and different, logs across inside of a fork of another tree and hoops, like we said here, that this might say, stay out of here, this is our area, or something else to other Squatch that might come in that area. And you can see here where the canopy of the trees, over as you drove down there, the canopy got heavier and heavier like a tunnel. Here's that was the hut part that we've seen. It was all draped over with these vines and branches that had been pulled over. It didn't look like it was natural. Actually looked like something made this thing.
Yeah, the branches were woven together.
Yes, that's a better picture of the branches there.